this is Veronika Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. Today we're talking about changes in the Ukrainian economy in 2018, what's been successful, and what made the country less appealing to foreign investors. To talk more about the prospects for increasing economic growth, we welcome to the studio today Veronika Movchan, Academic Director at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. Veronika, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting.
So tell us in general, how would you rate last year's economy for Ukraine?
It was quite good. It could be better, but given all situation in the country and in the world, I think it was successful. Yes. The growth continued, exports continue to grow. We have continuous growth of investments, which is very important for the future growth. And also, despite all the difficulties, the country continued reforms. It creates foundation for institutional changes in the future and thus, once again, faster growth in the future.
And what were some of the major achievements that you saw last year?
A part of continuation of growth and continuation of macroeconomic stability. There are several landmarking changes. One of them is the Stockholm arbitrage, the victory of Ukraine that relieved the pressure on the foreign currency and also created opportunities to develop some better gas market in the country. We also have the new agreement with the International Monetary Fund, the new standby agreement. This is extremely important. And also, I would say, also legislative changes. For example, adoption on the new code on insolvency. It's one of the lagging behind components of doing business, plus completion of the entire corruption fight institutions, the creation of anti-corruption court, still not completed, right, but started, and launch of, for example, healthcare reforms. Actually, in almost every sphere, we have some movements, positive or negative, or not so quick, but basically we have only a couple of failures. I was trying to identify several, but there are a few. Probably, yeah. This is all of these with other spheres are help move the economy forward. So what are some of these areas then that you're about to tell us about? I think some of the areas that we didn't see growth in or didn't have as much that needed to be? I think that here we have one of the biggest failures is a failure to push forward land reform. We still have moratorium of agricultural land sales, and it actually is one of the big stumbling blocks in the insurance of proper property rights in the country. Yes. And the second one is probably the failure to launch big privatization. We have successful small privatization through online system Prozora, but big privatization did not show up. And it is linked that actually the government and the President, Parliament, the state as a whole did not convince people that the reforms are really successful, that are bringing changes. And that's why we see very slow foreign direct investments, so that it indicates that people don't really trust the property rights protection and rule of law in the country. I really hope that after elections, if everything is not everything that the reform path selected is preserved, we might see the change in the attitude of foreign investors and the boom in foreign investors that we really need, the Ukrainian economy needs.
And that has been an issue, is with Ukraine being able to better not just sell reforms to foreign directors, but even to one of the most important customers, which are Ukrainians themselves, to demonstrate how reforms have made changes and which can show more confidence and let people know that changes have been made.
Here its situation is not as straightforward as to foreigners that we can measure by FDI, because indeed the government failed to sell reforms to, like we call, ordinary people, to public. But if you see in investments, for example, we have 3 years in a row growth of investment in fixed capital from domestic sources by about 20% per year in real terms, which is really impressive. It means that business thinks that the situation is changing and it's possible to
invest and get profit and move forward. Also, if you look, for example, on exports, on trade, you see more and more small, medium companies in very different niches, very different, sometimes unbelievable products exporting to EU and to other countries. So actually business is changing, but a lot of people that are not so entrepreneurship oriented, people who are just employees, they do not feel that. Right. And the people who are financed by the budget, definitely they don't
absolutely.
Feel this
the pensioners, the retirees, people who are on benefits, absolutely. And this is something that I hope the government will make a focus on.
I hope so.
And unfortunately, as we know, in most any country, we probably won't see much of anything changing in the months before the election.
But also I hope that the growth will continue, because we had a very good harvest. Last year, if you compare 2017 and 18, you see that exports slowed in 2018, mostly due to the not so good agricultural harvest in 17. There was corn, it was sunflower seeds that dumped down some of the developments. This year, last year already, we have the tremendously good harvest. It will help to sustain changes, and then everything indeed depends on the election campaign and the results of the election campaign.
Absolutely. And let's switch gears a little bit and look at the international spheres more so. So where do you see Ukraine having made some of the, when it comes to relations with other countries, where have you seen the biggest changes and developments in the last year?
Basically, one of the most important is a continuation of relations with European Union, the implementation of association agreement. Here, one of the important steps is a completion of very technical agreement, this called Pan-Euromed, Pan-European Mediterranean Agreement on Rules of Origin, that allows using a different scheme of definition of origin and use inputs from other partners still to produce and to sell to the European Union products as Ukrainian products. So it's quite technical, but it's important, and it was completed last year, and starting this January 1st is full-fledged operational. We have Ukraine completed negotiations with Israel regarding free trade. It will also allow using these rules of origin. Ukraine focused intensively the last month on the agreements, how to arrange transit of gas over next period after 2019. I cannot say that we achieved here something, but at least a focus and intensity of talks with EU, with Russia, and how to complete unbundling procedures to ensure a different scheme here. All these things intensified, and I think it's important. But EU relations with EU is the priority, and where we have the focus.
And also, in addition, I have some data from the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, which signed 16 international agreements to finance new assistance programs.
Oh, yes, definitely. Right? But I was more about trade.
That and trade, and we'll just switch a little to this type of ash. So, these development of financial and technical cooperation with the EU, Korea, we see Germany. So what are some of these, tell us about some of these international projects then.
Here we should be grateful actually to international community, because it helps country to reform and also to make investments in some infrastructural projects. For me, IMF and European macro-financial support and the agreement with the support from the World Bank are the most important for macroeconomic stability, increase of international reserves. But also we definitely have a lot of agreements with of technical nature, technical assistance projects. They are reiterating. Actually, one more thing that Ukraine moves is on visa-free regimes. We had visa-free with the EU, we had more than a year ago, but Ukraine managed to complete negotiations with several other countries, so added to the list of countries that they can country citizens can visit without visas. So,
and that makes a difference also in increasing the flow of business partners, making it easier to create connections as well.
For sure, that's really important.
So can you give us an idea of what we might be able to look forward to in the coming year, not, taking in regard the elections, but when we look at what Ukraine could look forward to?
Oh, this year,
this year, in the coming year.
Yeah, actually, it will be difficult, and I can't forget elections, and actually I can't forget more parliamentary than presidential elections, because
even as in the U.S., we see anywhere this can completely change focuses, the intensity of one path or the other completely depends on who's elected as president, who is, as we even in the U.S. know, in Parliament. I mean, it makes a big difference of what the focuses are.
And here it's important because the president, he has very important decisions, but mostly in security and foreign policy. But all domestic decisions are made by Parliament. And here I see even higher risk than with presidential elections, because most likely we will have much more fragmented Parliament than before. I am not sure that this Parliament will be able to form a stable coalition, and as such, I do not expect that the forthcoming Parliament will be as reformatic as this Parliament is. So most likely, the strategy should be that the Parliament has to try to push and to adopt as many institutional changes before it's over. So this first half of the year, and then the next years it will be a time to implement. And also important that the country continues on the European path, on high commitment to democracy, to rule of law, and to the reforms launched. Then it will create trust of investors. But it will be very uneasy, because you mentioned the United States, we have Brexit in European Union.
It's a very uncertain a year with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, the uncertainty is everywhere, also in Asia, China's development.
And we've seen France, and just so we're going to have to see, it's going to be a year of uncertainty.
Yes, and my New Year wish was, let it be better than we expect.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Thank you so much for being with us today, Veronika. You've given us some great insight.
Thank you.
And that was Veronika Movchan, Academic Director at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned with UATV for more.